Professor Scott Kieff is going to talk about sort of what I informally call a soup to nuts overview of the job search, employment search, career search process. And Professor Kieff not only, he's obviously, right, he's a professor here, he's also worked for big law firms. He has hired people at big law firms. He has applied for jobs at big law firms. And I think most impressively to me, I've had students come up to me and tell me that they secured employment because of the advice he gave them. So again, I'm going to camp out in the back and make sure you guys aren't friending Scott Kieff on Facebook. And without further ado, here's Scott. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. All right, so let's just strap ourselves in because we're going to go a little quickly here, but that, I hope, is not too quickly. Everything that is on these slides and everything that I'm going to talk about is also available on the handouts. And so these are B-level PowerPoint slides in the sense that they have too much text for a live presentation. They are A-level PowerPoint slides in the sense that they have enough text to be helpful for you to take home and use later. And they're designed for that second purpose, not for the first. Let's just keep a sense of where we are. Let's frame our discussion about you. Why are you getting a job search? What's going on? It's because if you want a job, it's your job to get your job, all right? You need to have in your mind the notion that this is your responsibility. You have to go do this. There is nobody who can do this for you. There are lots of us who will help you, but this is by you. That means that you're in charge and you get the credit, and unfortunately that means you get the blame. So let's make sure that you remember to help yourself. We will help you, but you have to start by helping yourself. You should be enthusiastic about getting a job because getting a job is selling a product, and you're selling the best product you've ever met. It's you, right? It's awesome. It's all about you, and it's all about helping you, so you should feel comfortable investing in this enterprise. It's funny because that also means that you are the person who knows the most about you, and that means you know all the good stuff. You know all the wonderful things that you can do for somebody else. That's the blessing. The curse is you then have to tell everybody else. And that's actually hard to do. It's hard to do because they may not know why what you do so well will be helpful to them, and it is your job to explain that to them. And it's hard because it's awkward to talk about yourself, to engage in self-praise. It's hard because it sounds obnoxious, and it's hard because when they say no, you're going to feel that praise meant you really weren't as good as you thought. And you have to realize that if you're not getting rejected by a whole lot of people, you aren't even beginning to apply to the right number of people. Okay? You know all of those horrible flyers that destroy the environment that we get, stuffed under our mailboxes, in our door jams, in our lockers, advertising all sorts of stuff that we should buy? You know that you're sending out enough letters when your own letters start showing up on the floor, the third floor of the law school, okay? Like, your job is to get out there, and that means get rejected, okay? It's okay to get rejected. You want to get rejected. That's getting you data about whether you're even sending enough letters out. This is a two-step process, and you must always remember the steps and never mix up their order. Step 1, get offers. Step 2, make choices. Why would you ever want to mix up the order of these steps? Don't choose what you don't have, okay? Get offers, then make choices. Let's think about those people you're targeting, those law firms. There's this old I Love Lucy episode where Lucy and Ethel are working at this chocolate candy factory, and the pieces of chocolate are coming down the conveyor belt, and their job is to put those chocolates in these little paper doilies, and they start to put them in the doilies, and the chocolates are coming down faster and faster and faster still, and they start stuffing the chocolates in their pockets because they can't put them in the doilies fast, and they start eating them, and they just... That's the law firm. Law firms are getting letters like Lucy and Ethel are getting chocolates. And they're thinking about those letters the way Lucy and Ethel are thinking about those chocolates. That means that when a law firm says no to you, there are lots of personal relationships in life where no means no, and it's either rude or downright illegal to think otherwise, okay? I'm not giving advice about interpersonal relationships. But I am giving advice about jobs. When a firm rejects you, it means nothing. Nothing. Whatever they write in their cover letter means nothing, okay? You should essentially ignore it. I mean, listen, if they tell you, please reapply on pink stationery, I would do that. If they say, please apply in February, I would do that. But if they say no, don't think it means anything about you. If they tell you no because your hair is too dark, it's not because your hair is too dark. That's just the form sentence in their word processor that they included in their letter back to you, okay? Don't try to overanalyze the no's. There's an incredibly tiny amount of information in a rejection. No means nothing, okay? What are they looking for? They're looking for fungible, billable units, okay? That means that the incentive they have to get a better person than another person is tiny. What they're really looking to avoid is a bad choice. Someone who's going to blow up, someone who's going to go postal, someone who's going to do all the things that the last speaker told you not to do, okay? They're just looking to avoid problems. And the people they hire to monitor the conveyor belt, Lucy and Ethel, they have no particular incentive to focus on you and all of your wonderful attributes. And yet, I assure you, each of you has many wonderful attributes. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to get past Lucy and Ethel. You're trying to find the decision makers in the firm and the influence makers in the firm, the people who can make decisions and influence decisions. You're trying to reach out and touch them. And you're trying to then empower them to go out and make the decision to hire you. That's what this is all about. Now, this discussion, I'm just one guy. These are my views. These are not the official views of the school. I understand that some of the things that I'm saying are controversial and may, in fact, not be consistent with what some of the people in our Office of Career Services will tell you. All that I can tell you is, in 1992, I did everything that I'm telling you here, and it worked extremely well for me. And every year since then, I have used it for myself and my friends and my colleagues, my junior associates and my students, and it has worked exceptionally well for them. This morning, I had breakfast with my cousin, who's a first-year law student at the University of Wisconsin Law School. His fiancée happens to be a grad student here, so he was in town visiting. He used this process. It works exceptionally well. So I don't know what to say other than everyone I know who's done this has had great success with it. So where do you look? How do you find a job? Okay. Well, the first thing you should realize is what you exclude, where you do not look. And the answer is almost nowhere. Okay? If there is a place where you are sure you would not go because you have some personal or professional need that cannot be met by them on some reasonably expected terms that they would offer, okay, don't apply. No problem. Everywhere else, I'd apply. All right? Nome, Alaska, Paris, France, LA, San Francisco, big cities, small cities, north, south, east, west. Yes is the answer. I'd apply there. Okay? You have to always remember the order. Why would you possibly choose what you don't have or don't know you can get? By not applying places, you're making choices. You're mixing up the orders of the steps. Don't mix up the order of the steps. Step 1, get offers. Step 2, make choices. Don't make choices before you have offers. When do you look? Well, you pull the trigger, you send your letters out as a 1L in December, that's already passed, or January, now, okay? 2L and 3L, you want to target the biggest window in the market, which is the so-called second summer market. That's the market that begins actually at the end of your first summer. So this coming August, September, October, that's you really got to hit that market hard. Career services will bring firms on campus. Do that. There are job fairs. Do them. But in addition, not instead, do this. In addition, not instead, do this. In order to do this, It requires an immense amount of preparation that's actually very easy to do, but you have to do it. So in order to do this, I'd prepare far in advance. Okay? So if you're planning to send your letters out in December, I'd be preparing my letters in September. Okay? My cousin went up to Wisconsin, he knew he was going to send his letters out in December, so before school even started in August, he was preparing his letters, according to the process we're going to talk about here. And remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint, especially in economic times like these. As a 1L, you may not get a job in a private law firm, but this process will be exceptionally helpful to you even if you don't get a job in a private law firm this year, because the contacts you make through this process will basically hand you jobs at the end of this coming summer for your second year, and you will be infinitely far ahead of your colleagues who don't use this process. So who do you contact? Everybody remembers the Austin Powers movies with Dr. Evil and Mini-Me? Everybody in life wants their own Mini-Me, and your job is to find the people who are going to see in you their own Mini-Me. And how do you find those people? They're the people that when you look at their web page, you see something about them resonates in you. You want to find them. You want to find every one of them. You want to find them all. You want to contact them all. How do you find them? Where do you go? Every law firm's got a web page. Every lawyer has an I Love Me page on that law firm's web page. That's where you go to look. In addition, maybe you look at the West Legal Directory, the Martindale-Hubbell Directory, the National Association of Law Placement Directories. Those directories generally, I find, have less up-to-date information. I have not been with a law firm full-time since 2000, I guess, and I'm still listed with a couple of law firms, okay? Those directories are out of date. One of those law firms disappeared. It's still listed, okay? Those directories are out of date. I would look at them, but I would not stop with them. These days, use Google. Use Google and limit your searches to particular domains. If you don't know how to use search strategies in Google, talk to some tech friends. They'll teach you how to do it. Search Google. It will teach you how to do it. How do you collect your data? You get on these web pages, you're reading a lawyer's bio. Remember, we're talking about lawyers. Lawyers are decision makers in law firms, not recruiting coordinators. Recruiting coordinators are Lucy and Ethel. They're the processors. You're looking for the decision makers, and you're looking for the people who have power over Lucy and Ethel. You're looking for the people who have power over the processors. So you're looking for individual lawyers, associates, counsel, partners. You're looking for those people, those women, those men who are actually going to make decisions, okay? And you find 10 of them at the Smith & Jones firm, you're sending out 11 letters to the Smith & Jones firm, 10 to each of those people, plus 1 to the recruiting coordinator or hiring partner, okay? This is the kind of stuff you can kind of do late at night while watching TV, okay? You sit there and you build a file, a data file. You use a spreadsheet or you use Microsoft Outlook, because almost every one of these firms' biographical web pages has a V card or E card associated with it. There are lots of ways to do this, but you build a data set. And that data set is going to include, okay, the name, address, phone number, the salutation. If it's a former commissioner, your letter's going to read Dear Commissioner, not Dear Mrs., because you're offending her. You're presuming she's married, and you're presuming that she wasn't a commissioner, okay? You're going to use a targeted title. You're going to get her gender right. You're not going to presume that she's married. You're not going to care whether she's married. And you're definitely going to notice whether she was a president, commissioner, judge, and you're going to address her with proper respect, okay? But in addition to all of that stuff, you're going to type into your database a few clauses or a few sentences that we'll talk about later that will go and get merged into a letter to make that letter more tailored to the reader when she reads it, okay? And I think you should aim for several hundred, okay? Several hundred. I understand that our Career Services Office official rule is something like 40 or 50. I respect their views, and I totally disagree. Okay? I think they're wonderful people. This is not a criticism of them. Every time I did it, every time my friends did it, every time my former students did it, we were talking in the hundreds. Okay? Had breakfast this morning with my cousin, told you about that. He just got back from Iraq, 18 months in 82nd Airborne combat tour in Iraq. taken fire. He's got lots of natural conversations to have with people, right? Anyone in the military he could bond with a mini-me bond, right? He started to do this search. He was generating 1,000 to 1,500 hits. That was too many, okay? He had to narrow his search to only Army. Just let that sink in. He was cutting his search down to 500. Cutting it down to 500. Now, in addition, he, among those Army people, targeted the Wisconsin alum. But 560, I think, is what he ended up with. 560 letters. Save these from year to year. Hone this database. Increase this database. Update your clauses. Now, what are these clauses? You're going to prepare a cover letter. Everybody knows what a cover letter is. Let's talk about the cover letter. First things first, what stays out of the cover letter? I am great. I am good. I am hardworking. I'm energetic. I'm enthusiastic. I'm awesome. I'm sweet. I'm cute. I'm beautiful. Any self-praise. You can't say it. It's horrible to say in a letter. You can't say it. Why? Because why are you the judge of what's good? You have no particular credential to judge those things. And number two, you're particularly suspect in judging those things because you're hugely biased when you're talking about you. Don't say I'm great. Show I'm great. Don't say I work hard. Show I work hard. Don't say I'm creative. Show I'm creative. We'll talk about that in a minute. Don't overstate your particular preferences for a firm, for a practice, for a country, a city, a region. If you like it, say it. If you have a connection to it, say it. But don't say you're my first choice unless you are. Don't say I must unless you must. Don't say you plan to unless you really plan to. If there's a connection, put it out there. Use it. Work it. Own it. I have no problem with that. But don't overstate it. Don't say that you pick them because they're good at X. That's only slightly better than self-praise. It's just kissing up, right? They're going to know that you're kissing up. Show that you think they're great. Show that you're really interested in field X by speaking their language back to them. Read how they describe field X and talk to them about field X using their language. That shows that you think they're great at field X because you learned about field X and chose to talk to them about field X using their language. But if you just say, I'm really interested in working for you because you're a good firm, that just doesn't say very much. In fact, it says the opposite. It says that you use form cover letters and you're sloppy and you don't take the trouble to think about them. That's the opposite of mini-me. Don't tell them to feel free to call you. Don't tell them don't hesitate. That presumes that you have the power to tell them to hesitate and to tell them to not feel free. They got the power in the relationship. Don't ever think otherwise, and don't let them think that you think otherwise. This is about you asking them for something. It's not about you giving them permission for anything. Don't promise to call. Don't promise to visit. Call, visit, follow up, totally follow up, but don't promise to. Why not? Number one, what if you don't? Then you look like a schmuck, right? And number two, what does it say to you if you get a letter that somebody tells you they're going to act on? You immediately turf it because you know you don't have to act on it. You want these people to act. You want these people to see in you their own mini-me and then to go down the hall to the recruiting coordinator or the hiring partner or the hiring committee and say, man, you got to hire this lady. She's coming out of WashU. She's got great credentials. In fact, she's just like me. You totally ought to hire her. You don't want that person to wait. And that person, as you learned in the last talk, is monitoring her time. She's worried about every 10th of an hour. She's clocking her time. So she's got no place on her desk for stuff that she's going to get back to. You want her to get the letter and act on it, not get the letter and think you're going to act on it. Don't make mistakes. Don't say that you're looking forward to hearing from them. That presumes that you expect them to get back in touch with you. That asks them more than you need them to do. You don't need them to call you. You want them to act on you, but you don't need them to call you. What does go in the cover letter? Be proper salutation, we covered that. First paragraph, very straightforward. I am a first year, second year, third year law student, LLM law student, Washington University School of Law, interested in working as a summer associate, depending on whether this is for your summer job or your final job, at their organization, law firm, corporation, general counsel's office at ExxonMobil, Department of Justice, whatever it is. Just straightforward. And when? Next summer, beginning on graduation in May 2009, whatever it is, say it. That's your first sentence. That tells them who you are and what you want from them. Now, the next few sentences are the sentences that say great things about you without saying great things about you. You can't say great things about yourself. You have to show great things about yourself. Having enjoyed working in molecular biology for several years, I'm particularly interested in your intellectual property practice. Having enjoyed selling real estate for 4 years, I'm particularly interested in your transactions practice. Having enjoyed studying foreign relations, I'm particularly interested in your international practice. You use strategic use of passive voice. Passive voice is usually dangerous, but it's important when you're talking about yourself because it's more comfortable for a reader to hear. It's hard for a reader to hear someone say, I'm awesome. It's easy or easier, less awkward, for a reader to hear that you're kind of beginning to tell them why you care about them. And then they notice along the way that actually you told them that you served a tour of duty in Iraq, or you worked in the Peace Corps in Southeast Asia, or you actually worked on public relations, or you helped a Senate campaign, or you worked at a food kitchen. Anything that you have done, any of those things you want to sell, any of those strengths, put them in your letter, but don't make them part of a statement about how great you are. Make it part of a statement about your history that's going to connect you to them in a way that's relevant to them. They care about how you're going to help them. Along the way, they're going to learn something awesome about you. And that's much easier for them to learn than if you just say, I'm awesome. End with, I enclose a copy of my resume and hope you will please let me know if I may provide any additional information. That's very different from please don't hesitate to contact me. Please don't hesitate to let me know. I look forward to the possibility of joining your team, your group, your practice. You can pick whatever's comfortable for you. Maybe you thank them for your time and consideration, end with sincerely, at the end, enclosure, and list the enclosures. At least I recommend listing the enclosures. That second paragraph, that middle, that stuff that while you're building your data set, while you're typing into your database this person's name, address, and phone number, you're also going to type in the clause or sentence or 2 or 3 that are going to go into your letter, so that later when you run your mail merge, you're not thinking about how to write the letter. You've already written the tailored part of the letter when you are looking at their face, when you're looking at their web page. It's that focused, that easy. If you have a particular geographic link or preference to them, include it. If there's some kind of story you can tell, that story about your time working for Habitat for Humanity, that story about your time teaching kids in inner city schools, that story about your time working on a Senate committee, that story about your time serving in Iraq, whatever it is you did, whatever skills you, that story about that English paper you wrote that got an A and that got published, or that story about running the office for the school newspaper, whatever it is you did, that's the story, okay? This is where you use passive voice to make it read like a story rather than to sound like self-praise. You bury the most positive part about you. You bury it because you want it not to be jarring to the reader. You bury it. But then you link it to the most useful thing to them. Why does this matter to this part of their practice? Having trained in biology, I'm interested in your intellectual property practice, your patent practice, your biotech patent practice. How do you pick those terms? You're reading their bio, their webpage. You're using the terms that they use. If they call litigation combat, you call it combat. If they call it dispute resolution, you call it dispute resolution. If they call it pissing on each other's shoes, then that's what you do too. Okay? You're looking to use their language. You're getting inside their community. And you're being part of them by talking like them. And you're talking to them in your letter about why you can help them. A lot of people think that you have to mention the mini-me, that you also went to Smith & Jones High School, that you also went to WashU Law, that you also go to the same church, that you also play the same sport. I actually think that's too obvious. If that's on your CV, and I think that's frankly where it should be, then you should not reiterate it here, because I think it looks like you're pandering. Like you, right? That's a little too cute, at least for me. This is a personal preference point, but I would put it in my resume, not in my letter. If after you go through this slide, when you're writing your letter, you basically have one sentence, that's the most you can say about that person, then make that the second sentence to your first paragraph. If you've got 2 or 3, then maybe put 1 in the first paragraph and then 2 or 3 as your second paragraph, or put them all together as your second paragraph. It would be great if your cover letter had 3 paragraphs, but if you can't fill it with something useful, don't have 3 paragraphs. Just tell them who you are, what you want, and get out of there, okay? This is a sample cover letter I got off the Duke Law School Career Services Office webpage. I think it's terrible. The green sentence, the green is great. The part of the first sentence that's green is great. Okay, I'm a first-year student at Duke University School of Law, and I'm interested. Okay, that's good. In obtaining a position, why do they care about what you want to obtain? This is not about you. This is about you helping them. I'm not interested in obtaining anything. I'm interested in working for you. I'm interested in helping you. You're in a service-oriented business, so serve, okay? The beginning of your letter should be about serving. I'm interested in working for you, not I'm interested in getting from you. That letter's going in the trash. This is a guy who thinks I'm going to babysit him. Forget about it. I'm interested in working for you. I plan to return to the Boston area. I'm nervous about that. If you really do, say it. If not, I don't know. And if you're sending letters to other cities and the firm has offices in multiple cities and the firm actually has one hiring committee and your letters all show up in front of the same group, which they're easy to do if the administrative people are doing their job right, then you've told them that you plan to be in Boston and you also like San Diego. The plan to be in Boston looks a little less like a plan. You like Boston? Say it. You like San Diego? Say it. It's okay to like multiple places. I plan to be in multiple places? That's a little trickier. Attracted my attention because of its excellence? I mean, come on, You're interested in working there. You don't need to tell them that they're great. The power in the relationship is that you think they're better than not. That's why you're applying to them. That's fine. You don't need to say any more than that. You guys are awesome. I mean, maybe you say that in person, but I wouldn't write that. I'm a strong candidate. Are you ever going to believe me when I tell you I'm a strong candidate? In fact, I'm just going to think you're a pompous jerk, right? I served as a writer and editor of our school newspaper. I think there's a nugget of gold here, but they waste it. Having enjoyed working as the writer and editor for my school newspaper, I would be especially interested in your practice groups that focus on writing briefs, public relations, complex communications. Tie it to them and why it's going to help them. Don't just put it out there. Putting it out there either is self-praise or doesn't help. Tying it to them, making it clear that it's going to help them, that's what helps. I developed strong writing skills. No, you didn't. If you had strong writing skills, you wouldn't self-praise in writing. I learned to communicate. If someone tells you they're great, that's not communicating to you anything other than that they think they're great. A good communicator communicates what is important to communicate. And we're always communicating a million things that we don't intend to communicate. And we're always communicating other than what we're saying. The way we say it, how we present it, how we sell it. Be careful. This is a written document. It's not going to have the benefit of your happy face and kind personality next to it. It's going to be read by a lawyer. That lawyer's got a small amount of time. Tell them why you're going to help them. Same with the rest of the yellow. My qualifications. You don't want to discuss your qualifications. They don't want to discuss your qualifications. The only thing they care about is how you're going to help them. Your qualification sounds like you're a narcissist asking for therapy. I'm planning to be in Boston the week of December 8th. Nugget. It's a nugget. I would either hold that and use that as my follow-up. Hey, now that I'm going to be in Boston on December 18th, I thought it might be a good chance for us to get together, grab a cup of coffee. Can I buy you coffee, lunch, something like that? That would be my follow-up. Or tell them why it matters to them. I'm going to be in Boston on this date and would like to get together. Please let me know if you're available. I look forward to hearing from you soon. That's demanding, sets expectations too high, makes you look demanding. What are the logistics of the letter? Generally conservative format, font, style. The paper should be off-white. Why? Because in a stack of photocopied paper, you want it to stand out. Every desk is full of lots and lots of office paper, and if it's off-white, there's just a greater chance that it will catch the person's eye. Make sure that it works with your laser printer. Get matching stationery for your list of references and any other attachments you're going to include, and make sure that the letter matches. Make sure that all of this can be run through your laser printer. For your references, you should have maybe 2, maybe 4. You should have a header or footer or some general layout for your letter that matches your CV, that matches your list of references, and each separate sheet of paper includes the same name, address, contact information for you, so that if they get separated, they can be put back together, or if they get separated, at least they can call you, okay? You send paper. Why? Because spam gets deleted. Okay, you send paper. Actual paper, first-class mail with an actual stamp. Then you can follow up. Save the PDF, save an electronic copy to send as an email later. When you follow up with them by email to say that I have gotten an invitation from your competing firm, you don't label it that way. If they're Smith & Jones, you tell them that the Jones & Smith firm has contacted you. You gently let them know that. When you follow up, you let them know that you had contacted them before and enclose the PDF of your letter, list of references, and CV. You can do all of this months in advance, and then December whatever, when the NALP rules allow you to send them, you send them. You just drop a bag at the post office. Okay? For your resume, the only information on that resume is stuff that's going to help you. Everything is going to be accurate, but it's going to be positioned to put you in a positive light, not a neutral light, not a negative light. Think about GPAs and rankings, and just talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to yourself in the mirror, and ask yourself whether, I just took this off our webpage, we have a B plus is a 90 to an 88. And ask yourself whether you think it looks better to list it as a B plus or as a 90. I don't know. I'm torn. If I had a 90, I would probably list it as a 90, not a B plus. If I had an 88, I might list it as a B plus or an 88. I'm not sure. But this is an atmospheric point. You're asking yourself as a marketing matter, what's going to look best? Always be accurate. Never lie. I'm not suggesting that you overstate or lie. I'm suggesting that as among the available options, pick the ones that best present your data. Over 16% of our class gets greater than a 92. If I were a 92, I wouldn't list it as top 16%. I would list it as a 92 because a lot of people think that that means top 8%. I wouldn't tell them it's top 8%. I'm not saying lie. I'm saying Present factual information in the light that is most favorable to you. Throughout the resume where you describe your clubs and your jobs and your other experiences, use active voice declarations that talk about what you did. Prepared X, achieved Y, awarded Z, wrote X, represented clients, supervised staff. Use simple words, not complicated lawyer words. Don't assist, you helped. Don't utilize, use. Okay? Rehearse before every conversation, whether it's an informational interview or an actual interview or a phone call follow-up. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse a story for everything on your resume. And every one of those stories is designed to say something awesome about you. And if you can't do that, it ain't got any business being on your resume, because your resume is about all the great stuff about you. You want a story to go with every one of them. A lot of people put at the bottom in their interest section that they like to travel. I think this is tricky. The benefit is it adds some color and it shows you're an interesting person. The risk is you look like a pretty wealthy kid whose parents send him to Paris every week when you were growing up, and that's great, but actually we want you to come work for us, not travel for us. So I think it's tricky. I think you have to decide how are you going to present stuff that will give you the opportunity to have a human interest conversation and make you look interesting, but not make you look high maintenance or weird or in any way difficult. Who are your references? Someone who can and will sing your praises based on good information. Okay? Someone who will not sing your shortcomings. And I know that sounds weird, but I can tell you lots of stories of people who have, unfortunately, as references, said more bad than good. You want people who will say good and only good, and you want people who can say it based on good information. A law professor, a boss, a colleague, somebody who you had in college or grad school as a professor. A lot of people come to my classes. They don't say a word throughout the semester. They get the highest grade on the exam. 3 years later, they ask me to be a reference, and I ask them who they are. I have no clue who they are because they didn't engage in class. Other people will come to me and they'll say, I engaged in class. I seemed to enjoy the class. Every time we were talking with each other in class, you seemed to engage me. I'm embarrassed. I happen to have only gotten an X or a Y or a Z on the exam. Would you be a positive reference for me? And my answer is, absolutely yes. I know who you are. You said all these wonderful things. No problem. Who cares what you got on the final exam? The final exam is on your transcript. I can't talk about that. I didn't even know who you were when I graded your exams. You're just an anonymous number. But I can talk about you. But I can only talk about you if I know you. And I can only know you if you show yourself to me. And then it will be my job to talk great about you. I will go to bat for you. I will go to bat for you all the time, every day. I return phone calls. I call references from halfway around the world. I don't care what time zone I'm in. I will call somebody and give a positive reference in the time zone of the person who's asking for the reference to be convenient to them. It is my job to go to bat for you. I like going to bat for you. Seeing you thrive makes me happy. And I believe the same is true for my colleagues. But you got to help us help you. Engage, that allows us to sing your praises. Come and ask your potential referees. Ask them in advance. Tell them what you're doing. I'm applying for X, and I wonder whether you would be willing to serve as a positive reference for me. Tell them what it would entail. You're going to have to write a letter. You're going to take some phone calls. And then, by the way, follow up with them and tell them, give them a copy of everything you're sending in as your application so that they are armed with the same ammunition the decision-making committee is armed with. If a letter is required, give me the don't tell me, oh, by the way, write a letter of recommendation. Tell me to whom, right? Give me their address, okay? Give me a deadline. Tell me whether I'm going to send it to them or sign and seal the back of the envelope and you're going to come pick it up to include with your application package. Sometimes you have preferences on that point. Sometimes the person to whom you're applying has preferences on that point. Figure all of that stuff out, tell me, and I'll do it. No problem. You want fries with that? I'm happy to help. But you got to let me know what you want. Tell me who your other referees are. Nobody likes being the only water carrier. Everybody likes knowing that other people are carrying water for you. And then we can bond with each other about helping you. And we can coordinate with each other how best to help you. So let us know. Give them all of the ammunition. Help us know how to help you. And then keep us up to date. Let us know what you decide. After you send your letters, follow up. If you're going to be in their location, and by the way, you have control over that, right? You can just plan to be in their location. But if one of their competitors calls you and invites you for an interview, I would let them know that too. I would do it gently. Gently let them know. I would be in town because the Smith & Jones firm has invited me in for an interview, but it would really be great while I'm in town to get a chance to chat with you. You have such an exciting practice. Now on the phone you can say it's such an exciting practice, particularly interested if you are. If there's some very important deadline or some other really great news about you, you just won the Nobel Prize, you just got all A's, you just something, if you've got that info and it's really material, send it. With that email, it's basically going to be your cover letter, some short statement about this new information, and then you're attaching the PDF. And then after you send the email, follow up with a phone call, because these days spam filters catch too many things. Now you've got this meeting. Maybe it's an actual interview. Find out who you're going to talk to. Learn about them. Learn about them and learn about their organization. If they use words that you don't know, look them up. Figure them out. Get on the web. Read their web page. Figure out how you're going to get there and make sure you can get there and make sure you do get there. Make sure you're going to get there early. Practice your stories. Practice your conversation. Practice everything in advance. Be gracious and friendly to the assistants, to the secretaries, to the bosses, to everybody. You never know who's influencing the decision. And the last thing you want is the boss who has an assistant who says to the boss, yeah, you know that lady who's coming in, she is a total jerk. Right? You don't want that. You're nice to everybody you interact with. Okay? Arrive early. Arrive early so that you can read the literature that the firm puts out, so that you can find out what's happened, if there's any news. Arrive early because maybe you can have a nice conversation with somebody. Maybe something other good will happen. I'll never forget my first interview. I know this sounds horrible, but it ended up working out fine for everybody involved. Senior partner had a stroke. I was the only one who knew CPR. They made me an offer. But I was just sitting there in the waiting room waiting, and people came running down the hall. Does anyone know CPR? Does anyone know CPR? Right? You never know what's going to happen. Get there early. Make sure you're ready. Pay attention. Dress relatively conservatively. The only thing you want in your hand is a slim portfolio or briefcase. And in that slim portfolio or briefcase, you want paper copies of your CV, your resume, your list of references, and any other information they ask you to bring. If they ask you for your transcripts, writing samples, have them. And you want multiple copies of all of those things so that when you go in to meet with Susie Jones, the first interview, and she's rustling around on her desk because she can't find anything about you, you say, oh, don't worry, here you go. Okay? You just give her a copy of your stuff. All right? I happen to always carry note cards with me. Just 3x5 note cards, because I think it's easier to write on them inobtrusively than it is to write on a full sheet of paper, because I just kind of carry it and I can hold it in my hand and take a few notes. Some people prefer to have a full tablet of paper. If that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do. But I would always bring, in addition to stuff that you're going to give them, some stuff that you're going to use to jot notes to yourself about them. About them. About them so that you can use it in the interview, and about them so that you can use it in your follow-up thank you notes. Now, what is the interview? The entire purpose of the interview is to convince them to hire you. That's what it's about. It is not about you evaluating them. If you ever slip into evaluative mode, you're wasting your time. You're wasting valuable time that you could be using to convince them to hire you, and you're messing around trying to figure out whether you want to work for them. That is a total waste of your time. You don't even know that you have an offer yet. Don't even begin to think about whether you want to work there. The only thing you want to think about is how to get them to want you. That's the only thing you want to achieve out of an interview, is to get them to want you. Okay? Be happy, be enthusiastic about everything. Be human, relate to them as a person. Focus on substance, focus on work, focus on being a service provider to them. The old Donahue TV show, he used to have a baton microphone, and he would demonstrably move the baton back and forth from himself to the person to whom he was speaking. A nice interview has the conversation moving back and forth like that. Why do you want it moving back and forth like that? Because it will feel like a conversation. It's not a conversation. It's a sales pitch. But you want it to feel like a conversation. When they're talking, take a breath, rest, gather your thoughts. You prepared for this interview with a whole set of bombs you were going to drop on targets, right? You had a whole set of points you wanted to get on a scoreboard. And when that person's talking, you're racking your brain trying to figure out how many of the next points can I get the next time the microphone comes back to me, because I want some more points on a scoreboard. That's what you're thinking. You're listening carefully to everything that person's saying, not because you care one iota about it after the interview, but because you're looking for opportunities to find hooks on which you can hang your points. The great things about you that you need that person to know in order to think you're awesome. And you're trying to figure out how you can find some segue in the conversation to get into the conversation, all that good stuff about you. That's what you're doing when that person's talking. Everything they say is helping you frame what you're going to say next about how great you are. Without saying you're great, you're going to show you're great, okay? You can't say I'm great, but you got to show you're great. Every question you ask is not about evaluating them. It's about letting them talk so that you can gather information for you to use in that interview so that you can look good, look smart, look engaged, look excited, look happy, look human, and have the excuse to then get some more points. Jot notes so that you can put things in your thank you letters. It's okay between interviews. You go to a law firm for half a day, you're going to have a series of half-hour or 20-minute interviews. It's perfectly okay to say exactly the same thing in every interview. It's okay to spread a few things around, but it's actually okay to say exactly the same thing. Follow up and figure out who you met, because sometimes that changes. Interview pitfalls: do not ever evaluate them, and don't ever let them think you're evaluating them. Why does Google make so much money? It's a multi-billion-dollar company because people will pay that much money to get the attention of a customer. When you're in an interview, that's your customer, and their attention is exceptionally valuable to you, and you want to show them that it's valuable to you by using it to the end of the interview, the purpose of the interview, which is selling them on you. It's not evaluating them, okay? Plus, the more you're evaluating them, the more they think that you're not only the kind of person who wastes valuable time, they think you're the kind of person who's needy, narcissistic, judgmental, and power-hungry. Don't appear to be those things. Don't appear to be uninterested. Don't appear to be uninteresting. Don't be offended, and don't offend. Don't be too distant. Don't be too close. Don't talk trash, and stay away from dangerous topics. There are a range of interview questions that you should be prepared to get asked. They're on the slide in detail. You should just practice developing positive, upbeat, short answers that say something awesome about you. Answer the question, but this is not a deposition. This is not a national security evaluation with a polygraph, okay? Never lie, but don't worry about answering the question exactly the way they asked it. Respond to the question in general keeping with the good faith nature of the question, But make sure you respond by selling yourself. So if they ask you something for which the narrow, strict answer is awkward or unhelpful, don't give that answer. Instead say, it's funny that you asked that because it reminds me of, and then launch into some real great point, okay? And have practiced all of those. Now, if they come back and they ask you the hard stuff again, you got to reveal the bad stuff, reveal it. Don't lie, don't mislead, but always try to put things in the most positive light. Tricky questions, I would prepare for these too. They're bad questions. I would never ask these questions in an interview. What do you do with these? Know that some people ask them. My advice, practice gentle ways to reply, not to answer, but to reply pleasantly and seemingly directly, while actually guiding the conversation to a safe point about you. Avoid losing points and score some. That's the best you can do with these bad questions. What are some safe interview questions for you to ask? Any question that will guide the conversation towards you having the opportunity to say some more good things about you. That's a good question, right? What kind of people do best in your group? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, it's so funny you mentioned that because I'm blah, 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 blah. And I well remember when I blah, 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 blah for the blah, 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 right? You're using the question to give them a chance to talk, to give you the chance to get points on the scoreboard. How do you arrange your teams? Oh, that's great because I love working on big teams, small teams. Oh, that's great because I love giving orders. Oh, that's great because I love getting orders. Oh, that's great because, right? Whatever they say, you have an answer that shows that you can help them. I saw that your group, I saw that your team handled this, the WorldCom bankruptcy. Boy, what were you doing? I was wondering what type of work. There's a typo on this, by the way. What was that like? Ask them some question that will get them to talk about themselves, but that will get you to a part of the conversation where you can say some more awesome things about yourself. Look for opportunities. Now listen, it will happen. There were some people during interviews who will talk the entire interview. Look for opportunities to get a word in. Be gentle, say some nice things, but if you can't, that's okay, because interrupting them aggressively will be worse, okay? One of my best friends, colleague I worked with at a big firm in New York, interviewed for this firm with 104-degree temperature, okay? He thought he was dead, all right? I mean, literally, he thought he was dead. He sat in this interview with this guy who was a total narcissist and never said a word. Because he couldn't. He literally couldn't. First of all, he thought he was dead. And second of all, this guy never shut up. Afterwards, he got an offer. And later on, we were talking, and everyone in the firm kept telling us how this partner thought that guy was the best candidate he had ever interviewed. So, it's good if you can score some points, but if that person really needs to talk, let him. Unsafe interview questions for you to ask. Avoid, they're all on the slide. We don't have to go over them now. What are they generally about? They're about you looking like you're evaluating them, or they're about you looking like you didn't prepare for the interview because you're asking questions you could have answered for yourself by reading their webpage, or they're about you asking questions that will put them in a position of saying something that they could be embarrassed to say, like, why they lost this case, or why their firm is merging, or why their group is shrinking, or why, as a satellite office, they have no decision-making authority and it's all done at the mothership. These are all questions you don't want to ask in an interview. It might be useful to ask these after you get an offer, but you definitely don't want to ask them now. How do you decide which offer you're going to take, or whether you're going to take an offer? First of all, remember the order of the steps. Only if you have an offer do you have to make this decision. And only after you have an offer should you even begin to make this decision. Then you should sit down and think about your personal needs. You should then think about the work environment. What is it actually going to be like to work at this firm? What are the 3, 4, 5, maybe 8 people you're actually going to be interacting with day to day? It's not going to be that many more. It's not the firm. It's only a small number of people that you're really going to be working with. And then I would say, think about the type of work. I think prestige matters, especially for jobs earlier in your career. Prestige matters because it's human capital. It will make you more valuable to the next person who hires you. I would focus on your likelihood of thriving. Don't go in an environment where you're likely to blow up. You want to go to an environment where you're going to be successful, and most importantly, you're going to get an offer to return. If given a choice between two, I would pick the one where they make more offers than fewer offers, where their practice is growing rather than shrinking, because the one thing you want is to get offers. And the way to make yourself valuable in your next job search is to have gotten an offer. Then I would bake into the pie your preferences for a particular field or practice, whether it's litigation or a transaction. Then I might ask about, what types of things I'm going to be doing. And then I might ask about salary and location and, do they have hardwood or lightwood or granite? I would do it in that order. How do you approach your work? You heard a little bit about this, but I just want to remind everybody. You have a duty of care and loyalty to your clients. Work hard for them. Think about what is in their interest and do it. Think seriously about it. Think always about it. Your job is to help people. Help them. Think about your firm, your boss, your team, and help them. Think about what it means to be on a team. When you run a relay and you're coming in to the next runner, you make sure you put the baton in her palm, you slap it in her palm so she has a tactile notice that you have transferred the baton to her so that she knows she can start running again. Right? You punch out, you leave the office, you make darn sure everybody on your team knows everything that you have done that has to be transferred to somebody else. You never leave people swinging in the wind. You're always looking to help. You're always thinking about what they would want, and you're always looking to help anticipate problems and to solve them. There's only one way to get good at something, and there is only one way to build human capital. Pilots log hours in the cockpit. Surgeons log hours in the OR. Trial lawyers log hours at the table or examining witnesses on the stand. Time on task is the way you build your human capital. It's the way you build your skill set and your experience set. Billable hours should mean almost nothing to you other than that you should fill out your timesheets in a timely manner and send them in because that keeps the economics of the firm operational and administratively helps your team. What really matters to you, what matters more than anything else to you, what you should lust after is the opportunity to do work. Because as a professional, the only way you will ever get better is to do work, is to log time on task. That is gold to you. That is exceptionally important to you. It is more important than grades. It is more important than money. It is more important than anything else. Do work and do it well. That's how you get good, and that's how you get valuable. That's your human capital. Now, if you haven't taken depositions or haven't filed patent applications or haven't done whatever it is you want to do and you'd like to do it, how do you know how to do it? Read the conflict memos that circulate around the firm before the projects come into the firm. That will tell you the workflow that's coming into the firm. And then go to the billing partner who's on the conflict memo and say to her, hey, I see you're about to get the XYZ matter, and I just want to let you know I'd love to work on it for ABC reasons. What's she going to do when that matter clears the conflict committee and comes into the firm? She's going to pick up the phone and call you, because if the firm's operating well, all the lawyers in the firm are busy and already deployed. And so the way you manage your skill set and your experience set is you do everything you're doing well, and then you look for more so that you can expand your skill set and your experience set. You are the keeper of your own reputation, your own skills, and your own experiences. Never forget that. Every firm will tell you these days that it has a mentor and a committee and it's in charge of training you, and that's all possibly true. But the one thing that's certain is that you care about that stuff. You're the residual claimant and you have control over it. Manage it. Aggressively seek it out and always do it well. Build good, friendly, collegial relationships with the other people with whom you work. They will go on and do wonderful things, and they will help you, and you will help them. Get good reviews and get invited back, because the next person who wants to hire you will care a lot about what the last person who hired you chose to do. How do you think about billable hours? Focus on your human capital, what we were just talking about. Everybody's worried about 2,000 hours. Just do the math on this. That's 200 hours a month for 10 months. That's 2 months off every year. 200 hours a month is 50 hours a week. That's 10 hours a day with your weekends off. Okay? Just think about every weekend off and 2 months of the year off. You could do 2,000 hours like falling out of bed. It's not hard to do. Everybody complains about it. It's so easy. And now think about your friends on the med school campus. There are new laws in some states that put a ceiling on the amount of time doctors in training can log at 80 hours, 80 hours, 80 hours, 80 hours, 80. And almost every one of them is breaking that law, right? They're all worked out ways to get around it. 80 hours. They get 2 weeks vacation a year. Do the math. I'm pretty sure that 80 times 50, let's see, 8 times 5, 40, pick up the 2 other zeros, that's 4,000 hours. They're doing 4,000 hours, you're doing 2,000. And if you think you have stress, try telling somebody that you're sorry. Their daughter, their son didn't make it. You tried, and they didn't make it. That's stress. You have none of that stress. You have none of that stress. It is exceptionally rare that you as a lawyer have to go tell somebody that their loved one is dead because you couldn't save them. You're doing half the time, and you have no real stress. And then think about your friends in the military. They don't even have to worry about people dying. They got to worry about dying themselves. Think about your friends in the Peace Corps who have to worry about what they eat the next day, whether it's going to kill them, right? Whether they're going to die of dysentery, which is a horrible way of dying. I mean, just think about all the other things you could be doing with your lives and realize that 2,000 hours in a law firm is a wonderful opportunity to spend time working on intellectually challenging issues, helping people with their problems, helping to solve them in the cocoon of a relatively safe environment where you won't have to worry about the food, the water, getting shot at, or telling anybody that you actually contributed to their death. It's a pretty easy situation. I'm not saying that we should make light of it. I'm not saying that it's not hard work. What I am saying is most of the problems that lawyers encounter are self-induced. It's anxiety. It's your anxiety that causes you to stress. It's not the actual situation. How should you ultimately approach all of this? I think what you should do is focus on your work, focus on your human capital, focus on doing a good job, focus on learning about your own profession, focus on first skills, then prestige, then salary and other things. Seek out mentors, but don't expect them. Sometimes you'll find them in places you never thought to look. Sometimes they'll find you. Plan the short term only. Your understanding, your ideas, the things you like and don't like, your needs, and certainly your opportunities, all are going to change in ways that you cannot possibly anticipate. And so will the world around you. And so planning won't help you. What helps you is making decisions, throwing yourself into your work, doing great work, taking pleasure in it, and solving problems for people around you. That's a good life. That's a professional career. And people will say thank you, and they'll pay you. If you look to thrive, you will. I loved practicing law. I maintain a close relationship with the real world. I work with lots of law firms. If I can help in any way after this, please let me know. I know that you will love it too. Thank you.
We're going to have about 20 minutes of a question and answer panel. That was a lot, and I think that was I know that was spot on. And how do I know that? Because Rob Giles in the back is the hiring partner for Ice Miller, and he told me that was exactly right. So our panelists are going to come over, and Scott's going to stick around. If you have any questions, and I know you all do, we'll get out of here at about 12:05, which gives you 55 minutes for lunch. Thanks. Thanks.
My pleasure.
For those of you guys in the trial courtroom, there is supposed to be a microphone set up in there, so if you have a question, feel free to ask it. Any questions? Okay, in this sweater.
After we submit our resume and cover letter, we don't hear anything back. On a follow-up phone call, how do we, what do we follow up without being annoying?
Well, I would not follow up unless I have something to follow up with. So if you really have nothing, which is to say no news has arrived, you haven't gotten grades that are great, or you haven't gotten a competing offer, then you need to create news, and that news will be, I'm going to be in your town on these dates, and I would love to get together and buy you lunch or a cup of coffee. And I would do that maybe 3 weeks out, so that you could have a set of those phone calls during the course of that third week, so that if by the time that third week is winding up, it really doesn't look like anybody even wants to meet with you, you can make an informed decision about whether to buy 14-day advance purchase airfare. I mean, let me just mention, because this year I think is a tricky year for 1Ls. And again, this is a data set of one, but so my cousin sent out 640 letters. He has had invitations for people to take him to lunch in every single city in the country, okay? He has maintained 100 positive exchanges, like email, phone call exchanges, initiated by the receiver of the letter, and about 15 to 20 of those 100 have been so kind of positive and intense that I think it's fair to put them at an expected rate of return at around a 95% likelihood of a job next summer. Not for this coming summer, but for his second summer, and might be jobs this summer, depending on whether he gets good grades and whether they actually hire 1Ls. And of those 20, 4 have been, I'm contacting my friend at firm X because I think he might want to hire you, and I'm going to tell him you should. Did you know that Judge Mayer worked in was a ranger in Vietnam and loves to hire SF guys, and I mean, like, these are people who are doing work for my cousin. And again, I'm just telling the military connection because that happens to be authentic to him. Each of you has some range of connections. And the point is, if you do the math on this, you'll find 500 incredibly easily. And if you get that return rate, which I think you'll do, you'll find people will be doing work for you.
And I'd like to follow up on that too. My name is Rachel Broff-Keeler, and I'm the Judicial Clerkship Advisor for the Career Services Office. For those of you that are interested in interning with a judge this summer, and I should also mention, not for those of you that are wanting to do it through our formal clinic, but for those that are just wanting to go out and volunteer part-time or full-time if the judge has opportunities. It is helpful to follow up with them, and maybe even if you don't have a I'm going to be in town or something that is brand new to your information that you've already sent, it's helpful because particularly with judges, for those that don't have a formal process for receiving applications. So, for example, we have several federal district court judges that have sent postings into the office that say, okay, here are my times of year when I want you to apply. For the summer positions, I think most of them wanting to have applications by about the end of February, maybe early March. You know, those judges are used to acting like law firms, government offices that have regular summer programs. They know when applications are coming in. They're going to maybe send something out if they have the resources to send a rejection, but they have that in place. For the judges that do not have a formal process like that or have a much smaller one, maybe those that are at state trial court level, it may not be on the top of their radar to be staying on top of students that are sending in letters that are interested in working over the summer. So you might actually create an opportunity for yourself. I would also say this might apply to smaller law firms or smaller government agencies as well. By calling back to them, it's forcing them to pull it out from the bottom of the stack or find that off-white piece of paper on their desk and give you an answer. Maybe the answer is, I don't know yet, but I'll get back to you in a week or so. So that's a little bit of a difference with judges, and again, particularly it's because they just don't have the resources that the larger legal employers do to follow up on all of these things.
There was another one over here somewhere.
I was going to ask about split summers. If you get multiple offers, especially if they're in different fields, how do you tactfully approach asking people if they would be willing to split?
First of all, only after you have both offers. I mean, that's just really, really important because as I was preparing for this, I got out on the web to see sample questions that people should ask, and that showed up in one of the questions to ask during an interview. And I think that's just death to ask during an interview because it makes you look demanding, difficult, like you expect to get multiple offers. So, number one, only if you really have them. Number two, yeah, I think it can work. I did it. I think you just have to ask everybody, be straightforward, see what they say. You'll find some are open to it and some are not. And then if you have a particular situation that evolves, come talk to me and we'll develop some strategies for better questions to ask maybe, better ways to negotiate, or how at least to think about it. And sometimes what I've had luck doing in some cases is, just get on the phone myself and talk to people I know at those firms, and sometimes we can work out, arrangements.
When I was in law school, I think splitting was a little more common. I think over the last 5-6 years or so, splitting has become a little less common. This is a very general, and I hate generalizations, I probably wouldn't split as a 1L. As a 2L, I would come talk to one of us about splitting. I think splitting tends to be a little regional. It used to be very common throughout the South. Now Texas firms still do some splits, but a lot of them all require the first 6 weeks of the summer, so then the split, becomes a little more difficult in reality. So I would definitely come talk to us because, like I said, it varies by market and all of those kinds of things.
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to change. Keep going.
So one other tidbit. Your priorities in your decision making should be first, where will I get an offer? And if you think that splitting will actually decrease your chances of getting at least one of those offers, don't do it.
And I also think that it's possible to split between private employers and either government or public sector employers. And in some ways, there's sort of less of a competitive feel there than between two firms. And I think on the government and public interest side, they say, we understand you're trying to make a decision about what the right fit is for you. But I do think there are ways to sort of massage that as on-campus interviewing for your second year happens earlier and earlier. Some summer programs tend to be shorter and front-weighted, so you can actually do a full summer program of 8 or 10 weeks and then crunch in a month's single project that could actually be really helpful for a government or private interest employer, but you don't so much have to negotiate the split, but you can certainly talk to the firm about, service and how you can make this work without suggesting that you're not loyal or fully committed.
For the benefit of people in the trial courtroom, I'll start to repeat the question. I apologize for not thinking about that earlier.
Do you have any tips on sort of building this human capital? I found it easy to get the business card and to send the initial email, but I found, well, what do I talk to you about after that? Unless I know that you're a Ravens fan that just played last week, it seems really disingenuous. Do you have any tips or anything like that?
Okay, the question was a question about tips for building human capital.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, what I meant by human capital was a different part of the conversation. Human capital, I meant your own skills, your own experiences as a professional. I think what you meant was how do you build the conversational connections, the so-called mini-me. And I think on that question, the answer is just read their webpage and think about things that interest you in them, and those are probably going to be the same things that interest them in you. But if you run out of those, then just pick things that interest them in them. And that's easy because they're talking about it on their webpage. Remember, in a 20-minute interview or a half-hour interview, there's not a lot you can say. It's actually very hard because it has to feel polite and conversational. So you'll start with some chit-chat, but you want to practice all of those things. What you really want to get across are those points on the scoreboard, and that's all the stuff about you. Does that make sense?
Yes, I was more so thinking before you get to that point, when you're just meeting and greeting people and you're trying to get those people who are on your side who you can pass your resume to and so on and so forth, how do you sort of build and keep those connections going to where you can get to the point where you might actually see them on an interview?
Well, so you're asking how do you find the people? You find them from their web pages, not even from conversations. But if you do meet people at bar events or other events, I would add them to my database. I would generally not follow up too much. I mean, if there's something meaningful to gain from an interaction, do it. But don't just be their friend on Facebook. Don't just send them emails or phone calls. Hey, I was thinking of you today. It makes it look like you have too much time on your hands and like you're demanding their attention. So I think in a sense you're trying too hard by even asking these questions. Like, what you really want to do is focus on getting conversations about jobs and getting enough information to go into a cover letter.
So I was kind of looking at web pages and people's descriptions of what they do, and it sounds really interesting, but most of it, I know nothing about it, and I could never even pretend that I knew enough about it to have a conversation about it. And for some of the firms that a lot of people, when they're describing their work in detail, it's just all of it's kind of above my head. I haven't taken courses in bankruptcy or anything. So if you want to talk to that kind of person, what kind of questions can you ask them to get the ball rolling, rather than saying, wow, I have no idea what you do?
Well, I disagree with the premise.
Okay.
No one in my family is a lawyer. I trained in science, grew up in science, went to a science school. I found law school to be the most bizarre experience for me. I didn't understand any of the words, any of the language. I thought the way people thought was weird. The entire thing I thought was weird. I read newspaper articles, I read trade publications, I talked to people, I listened to my classmates, I listened to my professors. These days, you can do all of that from your desktop by, looking on YouTube. You just watch how people use the words, read how people write the words, talk to your friends, your classmates, read journal articles. You can actually learn an immense amount. And then, hey, they're not going to expect you to be an expert. They're expecting you to be a 1L. So their expectations are not going to be that high. As long as you can generally, not call a bank to court and, not call a judge a cop and, like as long as you can kind of get the name of the players right and generally get the types of activities right, you'll be ahead of the game.
And just to follow up, as has already been said, you never want to indicate that you know more about something than you do, because it will always come back to haunt you. The employers know that you're 1Ls. They know at this point in time that you've had one semester. They also know that they're probably looking at candidates from different schools who have different courses even in the first semester. So the main thing that they're looking for is they want to know that you, at least on a surface level, know what they do. So if you're going to an employer and you're in a large private law firm and they ask you, what areas of law are you interested in? And you say criminal law. Okay, you better follow it up with white-collar criminal law or something that they might do. They just want to know that you've done the research on why you might want to work for them. And then this is another example of why doing informational interviewing or networking, making contacts with people, not immediately saying, I want a job, but I'd like to learn about what you do. You only have so much time to take classes in school, and you only have 2 summers for most of you to have employment before you're going to make a decision about what you want to do when you graduate. So the more information, the more people you can talk to in different areas of the law, it's going to help you make a more informed decision about what you want to do ultimately, and also help you talk a little bit more about some of these things when you're in the interview. And we probably have already mentioned this at several of our programs, but there's an outstanding resource, I think, in the Career Services Office. It's a little orange book, and it's called The Official Guide to Legal Specialties. And the author interviewed lawyers in all areas of practice and asked them about, what do you do every day? Why do you like what you do? What courses were helpful in your practice? So that's an area where if you're going into a law firm that has bankruptcy and you're thinking, well, I don't know if I like it or not, so sure, I'll try it, but you want to find out maybe a little bit about what they do, you can go to that resource, read about it. Maybe try and find an upperclassman that's had bankruptcy or an alum that practiced bankruptcy, talk to them, and that'll give you a little bit more information before you go into the interview.
Yes.
I have a question. Once you met with someone for a informational interview and they gave you a lot of really helpful information and you want to send them a thank you letter, what should you put in that thank you letter?
Okay, the question was about a thank you letter following an informational interview. And I think the first thing you want to do is, obviously thank them for their time, but try to mention something from the informational interview, some advice that they gave you, and how you've acted on that advice. If they told you to contact, Jeff Smith, and ask him about this, say, I contacted Mr. Smith, he was very helpful and provided me the following, information about this, or, something like that. Obviously let them know that you valued their time because they're incredibly busy, and they took the time out to speak to someone who's a first-year law student. I think one of the things that's important to remember is that most of these attorneys that you'll be speaking to will remember what it was like to be a first-year law student who had had 1 semester of law school. So you have a sympathetic audience. But just be very gracious, thank them for the time, and be sure to mention something from the interview.
And then at the beginning of this summer, when you're doing whatever it is you're doing in the summer, follow up with all those people who responded to your letters and all those people with whom you had conversations, and just drop a short note. Just wanted to thank you again for replying to my letter of whatever. Just wanted to thank you again for meeting with me on date X to talk about topics Y and Z. This summer I will be doing ABC, and I look forward to engaging in the fall recruiting process for a job as a second-year summer associate the following summer. And then, at the end of that summer, as you enter your second-year job search, follow up with those people and with one of these direct letters that says, I'm a second-year law student at Washington. I'm beginning my second year at Washington University School of Law, interested in a position as a summer associate for next summer. You may remember that we corresponded, blah, blah, blah. Thank you, or I appreciate you taking the time to correspond with me, blah, 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 and then the rest of your cover letter. Right? So you're working the connection.
So how soon after the interview
So the question is how soon after, and the answer is as soon as convenient, as soon as practical. I mean, I wouldn't worry about doing it in the next 1, 2, 3 days, but I wouldn't kick it to the next 2 weeks.
And for informational interviews, I would say it is most important to do thank you letters. You'll get advice from our office when fall recruiting comes along, when you're doing the 20-minute on-campus interviews. There isn't really enough time to get thank you letters for those procedures, but informational interviews, it is so important to do those because you are working on building that personal connection that you may revisit, hopefully we'll revisit even a year or two down the line, and something beneficial might come out of it for you or the person you're speaking with.
And you always want to remember with any thank you letter that it is still part of your professional materials, and it's still part of the image you're presenting to that particular employer. So make sure that they're absolutely perfect, no typos, no grammar errors, all of that good stuff. Lunchtime? Any other questions? Any questions from the other room? Okay, we will go ahead and break for lunch. We start back at 1 p.m., so we'll see you then.
How you doing? Very nice to meet you, and thanks for sponsoring the break.
No, absolutely. I enjoyed your presentation very much. In fact, if you want to come talk to a whole firm of associates about how fortunate they ought to be.
I mean, I am happy to. I mean, I interact a lot.